When this janitor spoke Dutch, executives were shocked. What happened next is unreal. It was just another ordinary Wednesday at the sprawling corporate headquarters of Grantham Industries, a nerve-wracking maze of cubicles and shimmering glass walls. The mood was tense, the air electric with whispers of an impending layoff. But deep within the gleaming lobby stood an unexpected figure, Carl, the unassuming janitor with a twinkle in his eye, ready to sweep away the mundane. He wore a faded blue uniform too big for his wiry frame, his worn sneakers scuffing against the marble floor. Most people barely noticed him, absorbed as they were in their own hurried lives. But today would be different. As Carl pushed his mop through the polished floors, something peculiar happened. A group of high-ranking executives in crisp suits buzzed nearby, like bees around a hive. They mumbled in hushed tones, glancing at a sleek laptop set up on a nearby table. Suddenly, a voice erupted from Carl's tiny frame. "Where is the Vergathering?" he exclaimed, sending shockwaves through the air, the sound sharp and jarring, like ice cracking on a frozen lake. Heads turned, eyes wide in disbelief. Had he really just spoken Dutch? Was this the same janitor they passed every day, muttering to himself? Gasps flowed through the lobby like an electric current. The executives stumbled back, their faces flickering between confusion and disbelief. Was this man, this humble janitor, holding a secret that shattered their expectations? The questions hung heavy in the air like a storm cloud. Then the tension grew thicker. Carl felt it too, the tightness in his chest, the lump in his throat. This was no mere accident. He could feel the weight of their stares pierce him like needles. The air crackled, and in that moment, he became more than a janitor. Secrets danced in his eyes, mysteries swirling like smoke. What else lay hidden behind that jovial face? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The executives closed in, their brows furrowed with intrigue. One of them, a steely-eyed woman named Elena, stepped forward, her heart racing. "Carl, how do you know Dutch?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. A murmur rippled through the crowd. It was no longer just gossip, it was a gathering storm. What had they overlooked in their daily rush? The man they had dismissed was suddenly at the center of a mystery, unraveling before them like a complex puzzle. Carl glanced sideways, fear flashing in his eyes. Could he trust them with the truth? The room held its breath. Shadows fell over the crowd, faces growing tense. And then, as though an unseen hand had pulled a curtain, Carl opened his mouth again, but this time nothing came out. Silence wrapped around them, heavy and suffocating. What was coming next? Would the secret he held change everything they thought they knew? Could their lives, and perhaps the future of their company, hinge on the words he had yet to share? Whatever the truth was, it would shoot through the crowd like a bullet, connecting them all in a web of suspense. What had they awakened in Carl? And more intriguingly, what would he decide to reveal next? Carl's mouth opened, but the silence lingered, thick and deafening. The glint of smart watches and the crispness of tailored suits had turned into a cage, boxing him in. He felt like an alien, alienated from their world of power, and he stood at the edge of a precipice that could change everything. "Carl?" Elena pressed, her voice more urgent, almost pleading. "Please, we need to understand." Should he say it? Should he divulge the torrent of secrets spilling from his mind? The janitor, who was barely noticed, had suddenly become the focus of high-stakes concern. He took a deep breath, letting the tension swell in his lungs. The moment was stretching in a bizarre bending of time, every heartbeat echoing loudly in his ears. "Listen," Carl finally began, his voice trembling. "The Dutch, it's a part of my past." He could feel their eyes boring into him, pierce through his facade. He was no longer just a janitor. He was a man contemplating the choices that shaped his life. "What does that mean?" Another executive chimed in, a tall man with thinning hair who had gone pale, seemingly wrestling with disbelief and curiosity. "What does your past have to do with us?" The question hung like a heavy weight in the air. Carl surveyed the sea of faces, disbelief, tension, Anticipation, ordinary corporate workers suddenly caught up in an extraordinary tale that seemed to swirl around them like a gathering storm. It would either lift him or crush him entirely. My family. He started, fighting against the tide of memories crashing into him. They were from the Netherlands. I grew up speaking Dutch until my dad lost everything. The business, the house, everything. A ripple of emotion coursed through him, threatening to turn his voice to a whisper. He steadied himself, fixing his gaze on the laptops. The importance of their sleek appearance starkly contrasted with the internal chaos stirring within him. I had to adapt. Had to survive, he continued, words tumbling out. I learned English quickly, but my roots, they never left. I had to conceal who I really was in this place, blend in, like a ghost. His chest tightened, and the weight of his true identity became a heavy burden. But I've heard things, seen things. The executives leaned in, breathless, their interest peaked. Their whispers turned into murmurs of urgency, a buzz of curiosity wending its way between them. What could the janitor have seen that would strike at the heart of Grantham Industries? The executives, they laugh, Carl said, eyes darting among them. But there are cracks beneath the shiny surfaces, things they don't share. Whispers I've caught between the boards of this corporation. What are you saying? Elena's voice pushed past his anxiety, demanding clarity. What do you know? An icy sweat broke out on Carl's brow. The words clawed at him, refusing to be held back any longer. Something big is happening. I saw something I shouldn't have. Something that might make this company tremble. The words ignited gasps across the crowd, their eyes darting from Carl to one another. Was this just a shock tactic? Or was he genuinely holding a bombshell? As the tension mounted, the air felt charged with an electric fear. Could he lay it all out there? Would it break him completely? Would they even believe him? But the question brimming in his mind brought the whole world to a standstill. What if this was the moment he had been waiting for? The moment that could redefine his existence. I need to show you, but you might not like what you see, he said, steeling himself for the impact. Elena's brow furrowed, uncertainty clouding her sharp features. Show us what? Carl hesitated, glancing at the faces of those around him. They were entrusting him with their lives, unwittingly navigating deeper into uncharted territory. There are hidden files, he confessed, voice shaky. In the system, they relate to the layoffs. The revelation sent shockwaves through the group, palpable dread etched on their faces. What lay behind those hidden files? What truths were concealed there? As he prepared to lead them toward the heart of the company's secrets, a dark thought flickered in his mind. Was he ready for what lay ahead? The lobby buzzed with anticipation. Would Carl reveal the truth that could tear them apart or unite them against an unseen threat? They would find out soon enough, but one thing was certain. Once the door was opened, there would be no going back. Carl's heart raced as he turned to lead the way, urgency surging in every step. Behind him, the executives fell into a tight cluster, their eyes wide with a blend of skepticism and unease. He could feel Elena's gaze fixed on his back, a mix of expectation and doubt. Each echoing footfall felt like a countdown, a promise of revelation hanging in the air. They reached the dimly lit annex, the walls stained with the secrets of years gone by. The room hummed with the soft whir of computers, machines that held the fate of many. It was here the truth lingered, shrouded in digital shadows waiting to be unveiled. Carl punched in the access code, fingers trembling, as if the combination itself would reveal the curtains of corporate deception. With a click, the door swung open, revealing rows of sleek monitors. This way, Carl instructed, gesturing them inside. He could feel their eyes on him, heavy with expectation. What is your plan? One of the executives asked, his voice shaking slightly. I'll show you the files. You'll see for yourselves, Carl said, trying to steady his breath. The room's air felt stifling, thick with tension that he maneuvered to the central workstation, the glow of the screen illuminating his anxious face. He took a deep breath, steadying himself as he logged in. Fingers flew over the keyboard, anxiety mixing with anticipation, the moment tugging at the corners of hope. What is this about layoffs? Elena asked, urgency underscoring her tone. It's a lot deeper than that, Carl muttered under his breath, scanning through the chaotic lines of code. They're hiding more than just cutbacks. There's corruption, sabotage, even betrayal. The whir of the computer droned in the silence, and Carl's heart pounded. Just when he found the file labeled Project Blackout, a flicker of doubt clouded his thoughts. Did he really want to dig this deep? Here. He pointed, adrenaline spiking as the screen lit up like an ominous beacon. The document detailed financial discrepancies, coded messages about layoffs, and a shady deal with a foreign investment group. Names flashed across the screen that sent chills down his spine. He didn't want to believe it. Gasps erupted around him, disbelief painting their faces. This is insane. One executive exclaimed, squinting at the screen as if it held the key to some hidden apocalypse. Carl's gut twisted. I have to warn you, things aren't what they seem. These are your colleagues, your friends. Some of them are involved in this. Are you saying we can't trust anyone? Elena's voice was tinged with disbelief. Before he could respond, there was a sudden sound outside, a thunderous crash that echoed through the lobby. Time froze. They exchanged horrified glances. Had someone realized what they were getting into? Had the company already caught wind of his discovery? Just then, Carl's phone buzzed violently in his pocket. The name flashing on the screen made his stomach plummet. It was his father, his voice shaking. They're coming for you, Carl. You need to get out now. Panic gripped him. I need to go, he said, urgency lacing his voice. The room felt too close, like a trap closing in. But Elena stepped forward, her eyes blazing with a mixture of fear and determination. We can't leave without understanding. What if this breaks open something bigger? Bigger? Carl echoed, shaking his head, dread creeping in. You don't understand. This isn't just about layoffs. It's about lives. Trust us, echoed another executive, his resolve wavering against the dark tide. We need to confront them. If what you're saying is true, we need to expose it. Carl locked eyes with Elena, the weight of their shared decisions pressing heavily on his chest. Time is ticking, he said, shaking. I don't know how long we have. Just then, the clicking of heels echoed in the hallway, steps growing louder. It sounded almost like a countdown. What now? One of the executives whispered. They stood frozen, breaths held tight as the door rattled ominously, fear coiling in the pit of Carl's stomach. The air thickened with tension. There was no retreat. Could they face whatever awaited them outside that door? Or would this choice push them into a darkness from which they could never return? As the doorknob turned slowly, an unsettling creak marking the moment, Carl realized they were about to cross a line. The moment was now, and chaos was closing in. What would emerge on the other side? The door swung open with a slow, sinister creak that made Carl's heart pound in his chest. There, framed in the doorway, stood a tall figure dressed in a crisp suit, face shrouded in darkness from the hallway lights. It was Marcus, the VP of Operations, his reputation for ruthlessness known across the building. What is going on here? He demanded, eyes scanning the room, settling on the monitors bathed in blue light. Tension crackled in the air, thick as smoke. Carl's voice faltered. We were just what? Marcus cut him off, stepping further inside. His gaze pierced through them, a predator assessing the situation. You're not authorized to be in this room. I suggest you leave before this gets messy. Messy for whom? Elena stepped forward, voice steady despite the quaking in her limbs. We know about Project Blackout. You think we're just going to back down? Marcus's demeanor shifted, lips curling into a mirthless smile. You think you know anything? He gestured contemptuously at the screens, where damning documents were still displayed. That information is not what you think. You're playing with fire, and you'll get burned. Burned? Carl's voice cracked. You don't scare us. The group instinctively huddled closer together, their shared fear morphing into a fragile but palpable courage. Marcus's smile vanished. I'll give you one chance to walk away, he threatened, stepping forward further into the room, blocking the exit. Or else yet. Before he completed the sentence, the sound of glass shattering echoed from behind him, drowning his words in a chaos of shattered trust. Startled, everyone turned to see thick smoke rolling in from the lobby, filling the room like a menacing fog. Alarms began to blare, piercing through the tension like a siren wailing for justice. What the hell is happening? One of the executives shouted, panic evident in their eyes. Marcus's bravado cracked, and for the first time, uncertainty flickered across his features. This wasn't supposed to happen, he whispered, almost to himself. Get down, Carl shouted, pushing Elena and the others as the smoke thickened. His instincts took over, a primal need to preserve life surging through him. The moment felt as fragile as a bubble about to pop in the chaos. A silhouette loomed in the smoke, a shape moving with purpose. Carl squinted, struggling to discern if it was friend or foe. The form emerged into view, revealing a janitor clutching a canister, face determined yet terrified. "Run!" the janitor shouted, voice hoarse. "They're coming." "Coming?" Carl's chest tightened. How did this man know about what was unfolding? Before they could react, gunfire erupted from the hallway, ricocheting off the metal framework of the annex. The executive screamed, ducking for cover as Marcus yelled out commands, the situation spiraling into absolute chaos. "Everyone, we need to stick together," Carl shouted against the chaos, adrenaline coursing through his veins. But each second felt heavier, each breath a countdown to disaster. Amidst the rage of gunfire, the janitor tossed the canister toward them, where it erupted into a cloud of bright, orange smoke. "Go," he insisted, rushing toward Carl, eyes wide with fear and urgency. "This way. This is our chance." In that blinding moment, with threats closing in from all sides, fear collided with raw instinct. Could they trust this man? Or was it another trick in a game of corporate treachery? As the orange haze enveloped them, Carl took a step toward the janitor, who was motioning frantically to escape. But what lay ahead? A staircase, an exit, or something far more sinister? The answer lurked just out of reach, hidden in the swirling smoke and chaos. "Go now or die?" the janitor shouted, the urgency of his tone ringing clear. What choice would Carl make as the world around them crumbled under the weight of revelation? The chaos was relentless, and fate was beckoning him into a darker realm. But could they break free from the clutches of this nightmare? With one last look at Elena, Carl bolted forward, determined to confront whatever lay ahead. In the madness, the unknown awaited. What would it reveal about loyalty, truth, and survival? The orange smoke wrapped around them like a suffocating blanket, shifting and swirling in wild patterns. Carl sprinted after the janitor, grasping the overwhelming feeling that their survival relied on the stranger's guidance. "Follow me," the janitor shouted again, his eyes scanning frantically for threats. Carl felt his heart pound in rhythm with each footfall, fear enlightening every sense. He could already hear the faint echoes of footsteps in the distance, the sound of chaos closing in. "Where are we going?" Elena called out, her voice slicing through the tension. "To the service exit. Just trust me." The janitor glanced back, urgency written all over his face. "They want to look for you there." Gunfire erupted again, louder this time, and the vibrations rattled in Carl's chest. A graze of panic flared anew among the group as they pushed through the haze together. The door to freedom felt so close, yet perilously far. The janitor led them down narrow corridors, the fluorescent lights flickering ominously as the alarms blared overhead. "Stay quiet," he hissed as they turned a corner into a smaller hallway, the shadows seeming to leer at them from every angle. "Why? Who are you?" Carl managed to wheeze, desperate for answers that felt evasive in their flight. "Just a guy trying to survive," the janitor replied tersely, a flash of regret in his eyes, but he pushed them onward. "And someone who knows a lot more than you think about Project Blackout." A chill ran through Carl. "What do you mean?" "No time. We need to get out of here. Your lives depend on it." But Carl was consumed with confusion. Project Blackout. Who knew what that really entailed? The jest in the name felt anything but funny now, twisted in a reality fueled by betrayal and corporate greed. They reached a door, the service exit. The janitor kicked it open, revealing a dark staircase that spiraled down into shadows. A cacophony echoed from above, but here, it felt like a momentary breath of reprieve. He gestured for them to move fast. "Go," he shouted, and Carl didn't hesitate. Each step down demanded every ounce of bravery he had left, leaving behind the familiar comforts of their corporate lives. At the bottom, they emerged into another dimly lit hallway, the air thick with the scent of oil and cleaning supplies. Carl turned, catching the eyes of each fellow escapee, holding on to the hope that they were still together. "Which way now?" Elena whispered. "Follow me," the janitor said, scanning the area around them, his body tense like a coiled spring. But as they approached the end of the corridor, a low rumble echoed through the darkness. The janitor's eyes widened. They're coming. Bright lights flared to life just ahead, illuminating a storage room filled with dusty boxes and old equipment. In here, he urged, and they ducked inside. The room smothered by a heavy silence. They huddled among the equipment, shamefully aware of their escalating breaths. Carl couldn't help but wonder what lay beyond. Would they make it out? Did this janitor have the keys to saving them, or was he leading them to their doom? Before he could voice his fear, a loud bang reverberated from the door. Someone was trying to get in. Heart racing, Carl held his breath. Stay quiet. Whatever you do, don't make a sound. The door rattled again, then fell silent. Time stretched, teetering on the edge of panic. Carl's thoughts raced. What would it take to escape? And as the heavy sound of footsteps faded away, he realized one thing: they had entered a game far beyond their understanding. Betrayal was their only currency now. What secrets would the janitor reveal once they found safety? Would they survive the truth? The air in the storage room felt stale, clinging to them like a worn-out coat. Time held its breath, suspended in the grip of silence. The janitor stood by the door, pupils flaring as he pressed an ear against the cold metal. Sweat glimmered on his forehead, but he waved them to stay hidden. What now? Carl murmured, keeping his voice barely above a whisper. He glanced at Elena, who was visibly shaking, her hands gripping the edge of a rusting shelf. Just wait. The janitor's voice trembled slightly as he peered through the narrow cracks, eyes scanning for shapes, shadows moving outside. Minutes ticked by, stretching into a painful eternity. The atmosphere thickened with dread. What were they hiding from? Who were they hiding from? Suddenly, footsteps echoed down the narrow hall, a steady march, almost methodical. The janitor's muscles tensed further, and he suddenly dropped to a knee, motioning the others to do the same. The footsteps grew louder, the buzz of voices blurring together outside. Carl caught snippets, words like containment, protocol, and eliminate. His heart sank. The weight of reality crashed down on him. It wasn't just panic, it was something much darker. What had they stumbled into? Who were they? Elena whispered, her voice strained, barely able to keep fear at bay. Not anyone you want to know, the janitor hissed, his face taut with urgency. Listen, they've been experimenting. Something's gone wrong, and they'll do anything to cover it up. Experimenting? Questions flooded Carl's mind, but before he could voice them, a figure appeared outside the door, backlit by the harsh fluorescent lights of the corridor. Carl's breath halted. A tall silhouette, dressed in black, lingered just beyond the threshold, scanning the area. The figure didn't seem to notice them just yet, but the tension in the room escalated with each passing second. With a jolt, the janitor reached for a metal pipe hidden behind a box. Get ready. If they come in, we fight. We need to protect ourselves. Every muscle tightened. Carl's heart beat in sync with the fear that flooded his veins. He looked at Elena, who now had a grim resolve etched on her face. Together they clutched whatever they could find: battered tools, broken bottles, anything to serve as a makeshift weapon. The figure stepped closer, their face just out of reach of the light. Carl felt the hairs on his neck stand. What is happening? He thought. How did it come to this? Suddenly, the figure spoke. We know you're in there. Come out with your hands up. There's nowhere to run. The voice was cold, impersonal. It sent shivers down Carl's spine. They weren't just hunting for escapees, they were hunting for something more sinister. Take the back exit. The janitor suddenly urged, darting toward a different door tucked in a corner, leading into an even darker space. Now, with no time to question, Carl and Elena rushed after him, their legs moving on instinct, fear propelling their every step. As they slipped through the door, Carl's mind raced. What would they find on the other side? The janitor glanced back at them, eyes wide with a mix of fear and determination. I hope you're ready for the truth, he muttered, urgency in his tone. Because everything is about to change. The door slammed behind them, cutting off the world they'd known. Emerging into the maze of shadows, Carl felt the suffocating grip of anxiety. They were deep in the belly of the beast now. What awaited them in the darkness? And could they trust the janitor, or had they simply traded one form of captivity for another? With every step, the weight of their choices loomed closer. Whatever lay ahead might just unravel everything they thought they knew. The hall beyond the door was suffocatingly dark, the kind that swallowed sound and light. Carl felt his heartbeat pulsating in his ears as they pressed forward, adrenaline fueling their escape. He stumbled over an unseen obstacle, a crate, perhaps, but caught himself just in time, his palms scraping against the rough concrete. Elena stayed close, her breath quickening, nudging him to hurry as the echoes of their pursuers faded into the background. "Where are we going?" she hissed, her voice trembling. "Just follow me, we'll find a way out." The janitor's voice guided them through the shadows, his grip tight on the metal pipe, knuckles white with tension. Carl couldn't shake the feeling of dread pooling in his stomach. They had stumbled upon something far worse than a simple panic room. What had that figure meant when they spoke about elimination? As they navigated the labyrinth of crates and debris, the smell of something foul and chemical filled the air, mingling with the metallic tang of fear. Carl glanced back, half expecting to see the figure bounding after them, but all he could see was darkness, an unsettling silence stretching before them. "Keep going. There's a way out ahead," the janitor urged, his voice cutting through the thick tension. But then, suddenly, they halted. A steel door loomed before them, sealed shut with a single flickering light above, casting erratic shadows. The janitor pressed a palm against the door's grimy surface, listening intently. "If they were coming through here, we wouldn't be safe." A hint of hope flickered in Carl's chest until he saw the fading numbers on the keypad. Broken lights flickered above. Was this their exit, or a trap? What if it doesn't open? Elena whispered, clutching Carl's arm tightly. "We'll make it work," Carl replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. They were running on borrowed time. "Just give me a second." Before he could even finish his sentence, a loud crash echoed through the dark corridors behind them. Footsteps thundered, boots striking the ground with a relentless rhythm. "Go, go," the janitor shouted, urgency claws around his throat. Carl's fingers scrambled for the keypad, his heart racing as he frantically punched in numbers, not even knowing what he was hoping for. Panic clawed at him, and just as he began hitting random keys, the door began to groan, old machinery struggling in protest. "Oh God!" Elena gasped, eyes wide with terror, glancing back at the shadows creeping closer. "Come on, please," Carl urged the door. He pressed a final key, and with a jolt, the lock released with a loud clank. "The door!" the janitor shouted, shoving it open and practically pushing them all through. They stumbled into a narrow hallway bathed in emergency lights, the flicker almost mocking their escape. But there was no time for relief. A siren suddenly blared in the distance, harsh and shrieking, echoing through the hallways like a vengeful wail. They caught glimpses of men in black uniforms, rushing toward the sound. With a jolt, they dove into the next room, a maintenance area cluttered with tools and equipment, an anomaly amidst the chaos. The janitor slammed the door shut, pressing his back against it as adrenaline fueled his every movement. "What do we do now?" Carl asked, feeling the walls of panic close in again. "The only thing we can," the janitor said breathlessly. "We need to find out what happened here. We can't keep running." Elena looked at Carl, her eyes pleading. "But what if it's worse than we thought?" Carl felt the weight of her words. What if they weren't just escaping captivity, but walking straight towards something terrible, something that would change everything? The sound of footsteps and commands echoed from the hallway, getting closer, urgency cutting through the tension like a knife. "We have to figure this out now." As they gathered their resolve, the janitor's face took on a grave expression. "It's time you knew the truth about this place and about me." Carl's breath hitched. What could the janitor possibly reveal that would upend everything they knew? But before he could ask, the door rattled violently, and a voice from the other side spat, "You can't hide forever. We'll find you." A deafening clang resounded as something heavy struck the door. They had only moments left. What truth was lurking in the shadows? And who would emerge, intact, from the wreckage about to unfold? The door shuddered violently, the sound of pounding fists echoing through the cramped maintenance room. Carl pressed himself against the wall, a wave of desperation washing over him. The janitor's face was tight, eyes darting between the door and the small window set high above the workbench. "Please tell me you have another way out," Carl murmured, panic creeping into his voice. The janitor shook his head, his grip tightening on the pipe, knuckles white as fresh fear twisted in his gut. "We have to wait, just keep quiet," he urged, glancing at Elena who trembled beside Carl, her body tense as a bowstring. Outside, the voices rose in angry urgency. Check every room. They can't be far. A commanding voice barked, cutting through the haze of sound. Carl's heart quickened. Who were these people? What did they want? Elena peeked through the grimy window, but the bright lights outside made it impossible to see anything clearly. They're everywhere, she whispered, horror creeping into her tone. Suddenly, the janitor stepped away from the door, and Carl instinctively followed. We don't have much time. Let me explain. His voice dropped to a near whisper as he crouched low, drawing them in. I've worked here for years. This place, it's not what it seems. His words hung in the air, heavy and charged. They're doing experiments. Human trials. Carl's breath caught. The weight of those words crashed over him. What do you mean? Human trials? They're trying to create something dangerous. The figure you saw? That's one of their creations. If they find us, his words trailed off, brothered by a chilling realization. Why would you be involved? Carl demanded, anger bubbling beneath his fear. You knew. I didn't know until it was too late. The janitor shot back, frustration burning in his eyes. They have something on me, something that keeps me here. But I want to let them take you too. You deserve to know the truth before it's too late. A loud crash rang out, the door rattling in its frame again. The janitor held up a finger to his lips, signaling silence. Just then, they heard booted footsteps resound through the adjacent room, the creeping sound echoing against the mundane metal and concrete. We have to act, Carl urged, adrenaline surging again. We can't stay here. The janitor hesitated, weighing their options. There's a maintenance vent over there, he finally said, pointing toward a rusted metallic grate on the wall. It leads out, might have emergency access. Let us do it. Elena insisted, her voice trembling but determined. With frantic movements, they approached the vent. The janitor quickly removed the grate, exposing a narrow, dark tunnel. The air was stale and cloying, a smell of dust, and something far worse creeping from its depths. Who knows what's down there? Carl thought, dread creeping back in, but they had no choice. Go, the janitor urged, giving Carl a shove. The urgency in his voice left no room for doubt. One by one, they scrambled into the vent, the darkness closing around them like an old, worn shroud. It was cramped, metal scraping skin as they crawled. Each sound echoed louder than the last in the hollow space. Carl could hear his heartbeat in his ears, fear coiling tighter as they inched deeper into the unknown. Suddenly, the vent beneath them shook, a thunderous bang reverberating like an explosion, and the air filled with smoke and the acrid scent of chemicals. What was that? Elena gasped, panic surging back. Just keep moving, Carl shouted, pushing forward, praying for escape, but wondering if the truth he sought would lead them into more horror. As they moved deeper, the wall shook again, this time accompanied by the unmistakable sound of crashing metal. The tremors threatened to send them tumbling back, but they pressed on, fueled by fear, desperate to survive. What if we don't find an exit? Elena's voice trembled behind him. Then at least we'll know what we're up against, Carl replied, his voice laced with determination, but uncertainty gnawed at him. Then, a faint glimmer flickered up ahead, a small area where light spilled through a breach in the wall. It beckoned them, a chance beyond the grime and despair. But as they approached, another deafening sound reverberated through the vent. It wasn't just noise. It felt alive, as if something was coming for them. What awaited them in that light? Was it salvation or another trap set by those who sought them? The next moments would decide it all. The faint light grew brighter as they crawled forward, bringing with it a flicker of hope. But hope was a fragile thing. With every heartbeat, the unsettling noise in the dark behind them crackled like static, a reminder they weren't alone in this cramped metal tunnel. Come on, Carl whispered urgently, urging Elena ahead. The breaching light was close now, and he could almost feel the air change cooler, fresher, as if freedom were just within reach. But Elena hesitated, glancing behind her. What if it's a trap? Her voice was barely a whisper, laced with dread. We don't have a choice, Carl snapped. They'll find us here. We have to see what's waiting on the other side. The janitor crawled in front, a mix of resolve and fear etched across his face. He moved faster, urgency urging him on. Stay close, he hissed. With another push, Carl reached the breach. The light spilled in like a flood, illuminating the cramped spaces around them. Gritting his teeth and filled with adrenaline, he pulled himself through, crashing onto the cold floor outside. He quickly took stock in empty hallways stretched before them, pale walls illuminated by flickering fluorescent lights. Dust motes danced in the narrow beams, yet the oppressive silence around them felt menacing. Elena followed, dragging herself through the opening, and the janitor was the last, slipping out just as a distant shout echoed from the tunnel behind them. "They're coming." Carl's heart raced. Every instinct screamed for them to run. Without thinking, he grabbed Elena's hand and sprinted down the hallway. "Where now?" Elena gasped, her breath coming in quick, shallow bursts. "Left. We need to find stairs or an exit," Carl shouted, leading them down the corridor, a mix of instinct and desperation fueling his every movement. They turned sharply at the end of the hall and entered another room. It was large, filled with old machinery abandoned and covered in dust. Odd metal containers lined the walls, some labeled with ominous warnings in red. Carl's breath caught at the sight, the weight of what could be inside heavy in the air. "Wait," the janitor said suddenly, his eyes scanning the dark space. "I think there might be something of use." Before he could finish, a loud crash echoed from the vent behind them, followed by heavy footsteps. "This way," Carl urged, spotting a door at the far end of the room. An ominous hum filled the space, vibrating beneath their feet as they raced towards the door. With a frantic push, Carl flung it open, revealing a staircase spiraling upwards. "Go, now," he shouted, shoving Elena first before following the janitor. They climbed 2 steps at a time, the urgency growing heavier with each sound of boots pounding behind them. Just as they reached the second landing, they paused, leaning against the wall, breathless and shaking. "Do you hear that?" Elena whispered, her wide eyes darting around. From somewhere above, distant, guttural noises echoed like the growl of something unearthly and hungry. It chilled Carl's blood. Whatever experiments the janitor had spoken of, they now felt painfully real. "We need to keep moving," the janitor urged again. "The door at the top, if we can get outside, we might be safe." But as they prepared to ascend again, the door at the bottom of the staircase banged open with a force that rattled the walls. A shadow loomed ominously at the top, long limbs stretching down toward them. "Run!" Carl screamed, and they dashed up the stairs faster than they thought possible, the sounds of pursuit growing louder behind them. What awaited them above? A way out or a final confrontation with their terrifying pursuers? With each laboring step, the truth of their situation bore down on them like a vice. Do you think we'll make it?" Elena gasped, fear etched in her voice as they neared the final door. "We have to," Carl replied, steeling himself. "We can't let them win." But as he reached for the doorknob, icy dread coursed through him. Did they truly want to escape, or was something darker waiting just on the other side? And in that moment of uncertainty, Carl hesitated, the door before him feeling like a threshold into an abyss. Little did they know that their escape might lead them right into the heart of the horrors they tried to flee. Would they find freedom, or would they unlock something that should have remained hidden forever? Carl's hand shook as he gripped the doorknob, doubt clawing at his insides. The distant sounds of chaos faded for a moment, replaced by the thudding of his heart. He locked eyes with Elena and the janitor, desperation reflected in their gaze. "Are we ready for this?" Carl whispered, but deep down he knew there was no backing down now. The door creaked as he turned the handle, the tension in the air snapping like a taut string. With a final push, the door swung open, and blinding light flooded into the dim stairwell. They stumbled out, blinking against the brightness, and a wave of cool air washed over them. They stood on a roof overlooking the city. The skyline was an intimidating silhouette against the evening sky. It was beautiful, but fear quickly crept in as the sounds of pursuit picked up again. They could hear shouts echoing from below, a desperate hunt for them. "Over there," the janitor pointed, leading them toward the edge of the building. "There's a fire escape. We can climb down," and then a bead of sweat trickled down Carl's back. "Hurry!" But before they could make a move, gunfire erupted beneath them, bullets striking the concrete in sprays of dust. Panic surged, and Carl felt a rush of adrenaline as he yanked Elena closer, pushing them both behind an air conditioning unit for cover. "We can't stay here," Elena cried, panic vibrating in her voice. The fear in her eyes was palpable, igniting a fire in Carl. "I know," he shouted back. "But if we jump, it's a long way down." The janitor, fear etched into his features, nodded toward the escape ladder. "We have to trust it. Now or never." Instinct kicked in. Carl focused on the narrow escape route, swallowing down his dread. "Follow me," he yelled, pushing himself off the AC unit and bolting for the edge where the ladder hung. With a shaky resolve, they clambered down as the landscape blurred behind them. The descent was rapid, the world around them falling away in a dizzying rush. Carl's hands burned against the cold metal, but he clung to it, determination overshadowing his fear. They hit the ground in a frantic heap, rolling to their feet and sprinting toward the alley, breathless and alive. But safety still felt like a distant dream. "Where to now?" Elena gasped, looking over her shoulder as the sounds of pursuit faded slightly. "There." The janitor pointed to an open door at the side of a nearby building, panic thrumming in his voice. "In there. We can hide." They dove into the narrow space, colliding with shelving units and boxes. It was dark, the damp smell of cardboard and wood surrounding them. Huddled together, they pressed against the wall, the silence heavy with fear. Time stretched, and Carl could hear their hearts racing in the stillness. "What was that back at the headquarters?" he asked suddenly, trying to fill the void of fear. The janitor huffed out a shaky breath, finally meeting Carl's gaze. "They were creating something. It shouldn't exist." "What do you mean?" Elena demanded, more furious than frightened. "If you knew, why didn't you stop it?" "I had no power." The janitor shot back. "But I couldn't keep running without warning others. They're dangerous people, and they don't care who gets hurt." Carl clenched his fists. "But we can't let them keep doing this. The truth has to come out." The janitor nodded, his expression shifting from fear to resolve. "We can expose them, but we need evidence. Some way to prove it all." Just then, a loud crashing sound echoed through the building, cutting through their conversation. The door they came through was kicked open. Shadows darkened the doorway, figures moving with purpose and menace. "Hide," Carl hissed, and they dove behind the boxes just as a group of men stormed inside. Their faces were familiar corporate goons, pursing their lips in malicious certainty. "Check everywhere. They can't be far." One barked, his voice sharp as a knife. Carl held his breath. The terrors of what they would do if they found them played out in his mind like a twisted movie. He felt the janitor's presence beside him, a silent companion in this fight for life. Moments dragged on. He wanted to scream, "We'll find a way. We'll expose everything." But for now, all he could do was wait and search for a spark of courage in his chest. Suddenly, an idea ignited within him. I think I might know a way downstairs through the back rooms," he whispered. "There's no way they'll be expecting it." The janitor's eyes widened with understanding. "Lead the way, Carl." With a deep breath, Carl edged toward the back of the room, heart racing. They crawled past crates. The heaviness of every inch sent shockwaves of fear coursing through him. But escape was nearer than the horror trailing just behind them. They reached a door that felt hidden within the chaos of boxes. Carl pushed it open, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling downward into darkness. "Here," he said, urging them inside, the adrenaline rushing through his veins. The metallic steps echoed beneath them as they descended into deeper silence. They had to escape. They had to find the truth. But as they emerged from below, into one final room, the world around them opened up, revealing the answers they had searched for through all their fear. Before them lay piles of documents, files and disks scattered chaotically across the floor, each piece telling a story of corruption. A desk stood at the center, half left illuminated by a flickering lamp, and the air hummed with the chill of undeniable secrets. "This," Carl breathed, gazing at the trove of information. "This is everything." But the door creaked open above them, and footsteps echoed again. They had only moments left. "We have to scan these. Take as much as we can," Carl shouted, urgency surging through them. With hearts pounding, they quickly grabbed what they could. The weight of the truth felt heavy in their hands, but they were ready to uncover the darkness together and push back against the shadows that sought to consume them. "Let us go," the janitor urged, glancing back at the stairs. Time was slipping through their fingers, but with adrenaline surging through their veins, they bolted up and out of that dark room, ready to confront whatever awaited them in the light. As they burst onto the street, Fresh air hit their lungs like an awakening. Behind them, the chaos of their old lives faded. In front of them lay the battle they chose to face together. What is next? Elena asked breathlessly, determination unified in their eyes. We expose them, Carl promised, unified with the janitor and Elena, and we fight for our truth. And together, they stepped forward into the unknown, the promise of change stirring in their hearts, the city wide open with possibilities and truths waiting to be revealed. Whatever lay ahead, they were ready to meet it together. Now, the journey toward justice had only just begun. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us reach more people. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories about this wild conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this ending. Let us spread the word and keep this exhilarating adventure alive.